Now, many years ago, Square Enix released a groundbreaking title that went on to become one of the most beloved games in PlayStation and video game history.
You bastards.
Adam,
Don't
be cool, dude.
Don't do it, you piece of...
Last, the promise has been made.
No.
Not true.
Don't.
You're up.
This game is perfect. Final Fantasy VII is finally here. After what feels like a lifetime of waiting, fans of the beloved best-selling Final Fantasy title finally have their game in beautiful high definition. I, for one, am not the biggest fan of Final Fantasy, but love Final Fantasy VII and the impact it has had on the gaming world and the JRPG scene. Now, this remake is not just the meet expectations, remastered, cleaner version of the original game, cash cow edition. This game is far more than that. This remake is far more than just a remake, and in my opinion, a top contender for Game of the Year. Final Fantasy VII Remake blew away all my expectations and had me crying tears of joy and pride from the absolute beginning. I for one skipped down the demo released in March and played the game completely blind outside my playthrough of the original Final Fantasy VII. Holy shit, was I blown away minutes, no seconds into the game. Look at my face. I was an absolute mess.
You better stop!
I know this game is supposed to only be between like 15 to 25% of the original game, but honestly, only 10 hours into this remake, and I can't wait for the other parts to come out. This game is so great. Let's start with the narrative. 12 hours into the game, and I can say so far I am a huge fan of the narrative, and I'm in full support of all the new additions they added to the original story. This story feels a lot more connected now and logical. At least the first third of the game does, which is where I'm up to right now. Cloud's character is probably the most notable change, and the best one at that. This is the best version of Cloud I've seen in any of his depictions. Cloud has always been a strange character, one the fans of the years have kind of made into their own. A silent, cool soldier of war who's grudgy and is cold to all affection, and a shell of a past man who he once idolized as his teacher. The game completely throws out this character and focuses on bringing Cloud back to the roots as director Nomura intended. From the beginning, he appears to be the cold and calculated man we've all learned to love, but as the game progresses, he begins to morph into a character with clear visual struggles and at times with lack of confidence in himself. It can be seen best when characters around him don't treat him seriously and are quick to argue his position and attitude. Within a matter of 5 hours of gameplay, players begin to see Cloud morph into somebody who warms up to his soon-to-be peers from his actions and not his cold and harsh attitude. Characters grow on him and make him better for it. This is something I never really pictured Cloud being placed into outside his involvement in the original game. Once again, breaking the mold of the character we've all built in our head. So much of the story and narrative now focus on other characters and make every other character more fleshed out, and groups like Avalanche now are so much more likable because of it. Spending time listening to Jesse's backstory, for example, or watching Tifa and Barrett reflect on actions together without Cloud made these characters so much more memorable and help push the narrative forward a wonderful direction. Now, working on these characters and narrative, I imagine, was no easy feat. For many, this is the game that sucked them in and made them fully immersed, focus into a video game via its engaging plot and memorable characters. Thus, when making a remake, Square Enix had to be sure that they only not appealed to initial fans, but a new base of fans who have never picked up the original game, let alone were alive when said game was released. That being said, you still have certain elements from the previous game that are still in the game, like ATB, summons, and limit breaks, which are all part of a system that still exists, but it's done in a very unique and positive way not seen in any other mainline Final Fantasy game in my opinion. The closest game this probably gets to is probably Final Fantasy 15, which does have a similar system, but doesn't really follow the same ATB logic that Final Fantasy 7 does, especially since it carries it over from the original game. Now, just because Final Fantasy 7 Remake depends on Final Fantasy 7's original combat system does not hinder it in any way. The combat is very responsive and a lot of fun, and actually requires a lot of skill. The ATB system helps bring a sense of balance in fights where both inactivity with dodging and activity with fighting help build one's ATB and is rewarded. The skill in fighting come in one's ability to combine both inactivity and activity in real time to make smart choices with ATB, MP, and items. I initially thought the game would function like Kingdom Hearts, where I can mash attacks on a normal difficulty setting and just heal when need be. That's not the case here. Listen, I'm not saying that Kingdom Hearts is a bad combat system, but in my opinion, I get kinda old of it pretty fast. I know other players don't, but I do because I feel like I'm not putting too much skill into it without me putting on a difficulty that's way above anything I'll ever do in a Kingdom Hearts game. I tried bringing that Kingdom Hearts logic into Final Fantasy VII Remake, but what had happened was, I found myself mashing attacks to the point where both my health and my ATB were low. Thus I couldn't recover and had to dodge and wait for small windows to attack to help build my ATB and assist my party. This is definitely not how you should be approaching the game, and instead want to strategically learn how to attack at the right time in order to help build ATB without having it completely reduce along with your health, leaving you with no option but to really play smart and limited. The controls in this combat are really tight honestly, and feel natural and quick. With the exception of a camera that at times hugs walls depending on enemy location, combat feels alive, reinvented, and correct in this version. So much so I don't see myself ever returning to the initial combat system in the original Final Fantasy VII. The genius variety of one's party's mechanics carry well over in this game as well. Where Cloud is seen as an attacking force, Barret as a long distance option, Tifa as a close combat and quick hitter, and finally Aerith as a primarily magic heavy user with ranged spells and a lean in on recovery actions. The game does a good job of exploiting the weaknesses in your party along with their strengths. Tifa is no use against a giant defensive foe, Barret can only do so much close range, and Aerith fails to land much magic attacks when magic is not really an option against an opponent with high resistance. This forces players to swap between members and time their attacks correctly with strategy and pattern recognition in mind, which in my opinion is so much more fun than just blindly mashing attack. Summons feel best used here than in any Final Fantasy game I've ever played. Summons autopilot like party members, but they also make use of ATB with strong hits, and they utilize a final finisher when their timer runs out. Combining these party members' abilities and summons calls for some of my favorite and most memorable fighting gameplay experiences I've had in years, especially against bosses in the game. Moving on to visuals. They look stunning. It's so beautiful. The world of Midgar looks so amazing, and I truly hope this is what gamers back in the day when the first game came out envisioned Midgar would look like. It looks so great. The brand new opening sequence they added to the remake is all one really needs to see to understand the beauty behind the full game that presents itself before the player. It sets a tone immediately and brings out the big graphics guns ASAP. Once again, this made me cry. The characters here all look perfect, and I have absolutely no qualm with the final design in these games. Everyone feels alive and looks like real characters, real people with real stories and motifs and actions. Look at characters like Jessie, Scarlet, Heidegger, and Dawn, and you'll see what I mean. Each character's side or not is alive and brings new fresh personality to the table. Speaking of side characters, quick side note. Yo, why is Jessie so damn horny? Bro, like, she wasn't even close to this in the OG game. She wants it so bad, and the fact that Cloud fumbles the bag more times than I've replayed Ocarina of Time is so annoying. Jessie is so horny and flirts so hard with Cloud. Not to mention also Tifa and Aerith do really playfully flirt with Cloud, which I love, but Jessie is just horny. Like, Jesus Christ, why is she this horny on main? Final Fantasy VII Remake is a fabulous game. I honestly can't think of too many negatives. The only thing I can probably think of is at times the camera kind of hugs the wall, like I mentioned previously, but that's such a common thing in games now. It's kind of hard to not have camera issues, especially in a 3D environment of gameplay like this. And then I guess side missions aren't that fun at times. Some of them are great, some of them kind of feel like it's repetitive enemy beating, but it's not too much to make me think that this game is anything lower than a 10. I truly do believe that at this time, 12 hours into the game, I'm confident in giving Final Fantasy VII Remake a 10 out of 10. I know this is kind of extreme because I haven't finished the game yet, but man, I'm telling you, I really haven't played a game like this in a while that's made me feel this type of way. This is an amazing game. It's just so much more than a remake and has so much love behind it. I just can't get over how amazing it is. I think this is worth more than decades of wait. This is how you do a remake, and more importantly, this is how you meet expectations of a fan base when you make them wait for this long. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a solid 10 out of 10, and I cannot recommend it enough. This has been Simon from the Panic Brothers. Hoping you guys are staying safe, indoors, and taking care of yourselves. Until next time, see ya.